Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. My name is Eric, I'm the Fraudiophile. On this channel we talk about records, we talk about music equipment, and everything in between. So today I wanted to jump in and do my 2025 vinyl tag. I'd like to thank the Pretty Green Vinyl guy for starting this up in a very non-controversial manner. I do have a stack of records to go through. We'll run through the 20 questions that we have for vinyl tag. Love doing this. I encourage everybody out there who watches this, who doesn't have a channel, to go ahead and make your own. This is a great, easy way to jump into making videos because the prompts are all there for you. You don't have to think of anything other than your answers to these. So let's dive in. Number one, best purchase of 2024. For me, there have been quite a few, but this is my favorite album of the year. This can be either a new or an old purchase, but for me, I'm going to go with a new record. Gonna go with Manning Fireworks by MJ Lenderman. Definitely my favorite album of the year. I love the songwriting, I love the melodies, love the guitar playing. Look back at my Spotify Wrapped, Lenderman was all over the place. Not only this album, I love his previous album, Boat Songs. Plays guitar with a band called Wednesday, and then was also part of the great album by Waxahachie. He was working with Katie Crutchfield on her Tiger's Blood album. So Manning Fireworks, great album. If you haven't already listened to this, I definitely suggest you give this a listen. Definitely my favorite purchase of 2024. Question number two, 50 years later, best album in 1974. For me, that's going to be Pretzel Logic by Steely Dan. I've mentioned before on this channel, was never a big Steely Dan fan when I was younger, but really enjoyed them more and more every year. I find myself, this is one of my go-to albums to listen to of theirs. Great recording quality, great songwriting. Dirty Work's probably my favorite song off of this album, but I still listen to it all the time, along with everything else from the Dan. Another quick suggestion, if you haven't already seen the Yacht Rock documentary, check it out, it's fantastic. They talk a lot about Steely Dan and their influence on everybody in the entire genre known as Yacht Rock. Number three, an album that defines a genre. I'm gonna go with NWA's Straight Outta Compton. To me, this is the greatest gangster rap album of all times. Remember, my buddy Brian introduced me to this when we were kids. Ended up somehow getting a copy on cassette. I think I ended up with a CD as well. I remember teasing one of my brother's friends who was over at our house when we would listen to this, that it was actually banned and illegal. We were gonna get in trouble if we listened to it, so we'd always close all the curtains and freak him out a little bit before we play this. But nothing really defines a genre better of gangster rap than Straight Outta Compton does for me. Number four, best band from my home country. This is tough. I'm an American guy, I live here in Minnesota. This is probably my favorite band of all time, so I'm gonna say Pearl Jam. I listen to Pearl Jam more than anyone else. Pearl Jam, Pink Floyd, probably the two bands I listen to the most. Dark Matter, this is their album that came out this year. It's fantastic. I was lucky enough to see these guys about a year and a half ago. Saw them back in early 90s as well. Would love to get a chance to see Pearl Jam in concert again, but definitely my favorite American band. An artist you miss dearly. Just mentioned I'm from Minnesota. This is a band that's from Minnesota as well, and I've mentioned them on pretty much every video that I've ever put out, and that's going to be Low and the Great Destroyer. About 2 years ago, Mimi Parker, the singer and drummer for Low, passed away from cancer. If you haven't heard Low, it's Mimi and her husband, Alan Sparhawk. Beautiful harmonies. Started off as like a slowcore band, ended up being very electronic by their last couple albums. If you haven't heard these guys, check out The Great Destroyer. It's my favorite album, and definitely miss Mimi. Was lucky enough to see them perform in concert before she passed, and glad to see that Alan's back making some music, both solo and with their son Cyrus. So Mimi Parker missed is my person I miss most dearly. Number six, best live album in my collection. I'm gonna go with Mike Cooley, Patterson Hood, and Jason Isbell. This is live at the Schultz Theater, recorded on June 15th, 2014. It's an all-acoustic set with the three of them playing acoustic guitars, singing their harmonies, playing songs from the entire Drive-By Truckers catalog, as well as some of Jason Isbell's solo work. This sounds fantastic. It's one of the best sounding acoustic albums that I have from an audiophile perspective in my collection. and suggest everybody gives this one a listen at least once or twice. Number 7, your partner dumps you. What album to play? I'm going to go with Forever Ago by Bon Iver. Truly a breakup album. Justin Vernon, the driving force behind Bon Iver. This is his debut album as Bon Iver. After breaking up with his girlfriend, went up to his dad's cabin in northern Wisconsin with nothing other than some recording equipment, an acoustic guitar, and some VHS cassettes of Northern Exposure. So, yeah, this is about as sad and sappy as it gets, pretty much all acoustic. Flume is probably my favorite song on here. Skinny Love, just a lot of really good, sad breakup songs. Hopefully you don't get broken up with it. This is a good one to have in your arsenal, just in case. Best sounding drums is number 8. I'm going to go with Nirvana's In Utero. This is a pretty easy pick for me. I love Dave Grohl as a drummer. Love the way he plays. Love the way this is recorded. You add Steve Albini in to do the recording, and he's known for his great drum sounds anyways. Mix him together with Dave Grohl, and it doesn't get a whole lot better than this. Number 9, favorite artist that is a member of two or more bands. Dinosaur Jr. is one of my favorite bands, always has been. Their bass player, Lou Barlow, key member of Dinosaur, generally gets to play, or generally Jay Mascis will allow Lou to have one song on each Dinosaur album, and they're great songs. Every one of his Dinosaur songs is fantastic. But while he was separated from Jay and Dinosaur, he had a band called Sebadoh, and Bake Sale is my favorite of their albums. Great songwriting. This is very lo-fi with excellent songwriting, great melodies, cool guitars and bass on this too. Just love what Lou brings to the table, and he really plays bass like a guitar on the Dinosaur albums, and it's good to let him play guitar on these and let him write all the songs. Number 10, Beatles or Stones? Super easy. I love the Stones, but man, I'm a Beatles guy through and through. I think this goes back to my parents. My parents were big fans of the Beatles, and I really got into them probably late 80s, early 90s is when I started listening to a ton of Beatles. Have pretty much all of their albums in my collection. And yeah, they were one of the driving forces that got me collecting records once we found a box of records at Mom and Dad's that included a lot of Beatles records. Number 11, you find a bag of weed, what to listen to? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I live in Minnesota where weed is not illegal any longer. So you don't need to find a bag on the side of the road. You can go to pretty much any convenience store and buy gummies or THC seltzers. And they're finally starting to get some dispensaries around here as well. So I'm going to go with Sleep's Dope Smoker, right? It's a no-brainer. It's all about smoking dope. Drop out of life with bong in hand. Follow the smoke to the riff-filled land. 1 hour, 3 minutes, one single song. The recording of this is amazing. If you get a chance to read about this, how they set up the amps in different rooms because they were so loud, how much money they spent on weed alone, and how many years it took to actually get this record put together is a pretty amazing story. Album from the 80s I still listen to. Oh, by the way, my wife hates the Dope Smoker album. She basically doesn't let me listen to it when she's in the house. So I'm going to follow that up with what is her favorite album of all time, The Joshua Tree. One of the 80s albums that I listen to the most. You know, side one of this, there's not many better side ones ever recorded than The Joshua Tree. I was lucky enough to take her and my oldest to go and see them a few years ago when they performed this from cover to cover. So not many, I don't listen to a ton of music from the 80s, but this one's probably the one that we listen to the most. An artist whose political stance has soured you for number 13. Trying to stay out of politics these days, right? It's just, everything is so toxic. Everybody is so split on things. So I don't want to go too deep into this. I'm just going to say it's Roger Waters, especially for his stance on things in Ukraine. Pretty amazing how a guy who pretty much wrote this entire album, Animals, which is about, fat cats, corporations, greed, things like that, now has really changed. So he's the one who sours me the most. There's a lot of people that kind of make me sick on both sides of the spectrum, but this is pretty easy to go with. Favorite record label, number 14. Let's go with Blue Note. So Blue Note is a jazz record label. I would say probably close to half the records I have that are jazz records are Blue Note albums for a few reasons. They all sound fantastic. Rudy Van Gelder did most of the recordings of a lot of these kind of hard bop type albums from Blue Note. They're cheap. They're all like $25 for the Blue Note Classics. Pay a little more for the Tone Poets. And then just speaking of the label itself, that's a pretty iconic label right there, that Blue Note label. So definitely my favorite record label. Number 15, a run of 3 great singles. This is going to be The Killers and Hot Fuss. So this is the debut album from The Killers. Their first 3 singles were Mr. Brightside, Somebody Told Me, and All These Things That I've Done. That's a pretty fantastic run for the first 3 singles coming off of your debut album. They're a great band to see live too. We were lucky enough to see them at XL Energy Center with about 18,000 people. And then about a year and a half ago, they did an undersell at First Avenue in Minneapolis for about 900 people. So that was pretty cool to be a part of and see, but great run of 3 singles for this band. Number 16, RSD Purchase, you still listen to. I'm going to go with Sunvolt's Okima and the Melody of Riot. Not a big fan of doing record store day. I don't like standing in line whatsoever. Don't like crowds in general either. So don't really do a whole lot of record store day, but this is a record store release that I listen to a ton of. It's a little more rocking than most of the early Sunvolt records, which were more alt country. This one's got a little more, definitely say a little more rock edge to it. We listened to this a ton when my oldest was a baby, so this one has a sweet spot in my heart, and I still listen to this album all the time. Number 17, if you could be reincarnated as any musician, dead or alive. I think a lot of people will answer this question with some of the live fast, die hard, live fast, die young rock stars. I'm doing the opposite. I'm a family guy, right? Let's go with Jeff Skunk Baxter. So Skunk Baxter is a guitar player with the Doobie Brothers, did a lot of studio recording with Steely Dan as well. After his musical career ended, he basically cut his music career short, and he is now one of the most well-known, world-renowned experts in intercontinental ballistic missiles, rocketry, and missile technology. So pretty cool to see a guy who goes from living the rock star life with a band like the Doobie Brothers to working for I believe he works for the government in that role. Number 18, the best 3 lines in a song. So this was pretty tough for me. I'm more of a music guy. I like melody, I like guitar, I like the music. But for this one, I'm going to go with Jason Isbell from his album Southeastern. The song is Cover Me Up. And the 3 lines I like the most from this, the whole song is actually great, but the 3 lines I like was, I was so sure that what I needed was more, tried to shoot out the sun. So as somebody who has been sober for nearly 20 years, those words ring pretty true with me. This is a great sobriety album. It's just a great, well-written album, and the lyrics on this are perfect. But that's my favorite set of 3 lyrics from one specific song. Almost done. We're getting there. Number 19, an album that you never tire of. I'm going to go with Neutral Milk Hotel's The Aeroplane Flies Over the Sea. I'd seen this album cover. I'd heard the name Neutral Milk Hotel. But the first time I listened to this was probably about 10 years ago. My wife and I were staying in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I mentioned Justin Vernon and Bon Iver earlier at a hotel that Justin Vernon owns, where they have a record player in each room, and they have a collection of vinyl down at the front desk. So I was flipping through vinyl, grabbed this one, took it up to the room. My wife and I listened to this, and we're just blown away. I listen to this all the time, always from beginning to end. It's like one long song. I don't think you should consume this as singles or as individual songs, but that it needs to be played from beginning to end. Rarely does a month go by that I don't listen to this album, and probably gets spun more than any single record in my entire collection of, almost 600 records. All right, number 20, last question is your favorite vinyl community channel. So I love a bunch of vinyl community channels, but there are a few I'd like to shout out and then one specifically. So Lost Mixtapes, I know I've mentioned his channel on here before, how much I enjoy his takes, especially like his series on REM, ranking those albums from beginning to end is fantastic. Another guy I really, really like is Kenny's Audiophile Jazz Reviews. Just seems like a great guy. Talks about jazz, like how he starts all of his videos in his white t-shirt and how he's Kenny out there. So he's fantastic. Mazzy, he's the GOAT, right? Nobody's better at doing this kind of thing than what Mazzy does and has been doing for years and really influences everybody in the vinyl community. One I've really watched a lot this last year is Tim at the University of Vinyl. Big Steely Dan guy himself, but I like how he's kind of always on the quest to find the best sounding version of every single record that he has. NTX Vinyl is another one that I've talked about and really love. G.I. Sanders out of Dallas, Texas, actually owns a record store, does a lot of online stuff, and has a great community on Facebook of this Now Spinning group. But the one I'm going to shout out and say I would say is my favorite right now is The Long Cut. Just a very honest and open channel talking about not only vinyl, but about mental health and family and musicians. And it's just a great all-around channel. Just seems like a great guy who's very open and honest and kind of will open a vein during his videos. And I look forward to seeing every one of those. So that's it. That's my Vinyl Tag 2025. Thanks for watching. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you haven't made one, go ahead and make this video. It's easy to do. It's easy. And if you like what you see here on my channel, please subscribe. I'm trying to build a little bit of a community here. And look forward to seeing you all the next time.